Hi everybody. So we're going to be working on our next border here, and that's simply a satin stitch, a blanket stitch, a running stitch, and a little French knot. And it makes a pretty cool, despite the fact that the stitches aren't that difficult, it makes a very nice intricate border, a little bit of a modern look to it. And so I've done a little bit. This is kind of how the completed look is, and as you can see, I kind of stopped with the stitches so that I can get up here to the top, and I'll show you how we get this completed. Alright, so we're going to first we're going to put in these little radial blanket stitches. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a stitch, and then I'm going to come up right where I started the stitch and come across and just start doing my blanket stitch. And I just make sure that you take a smaller stitch on the inside and wider on the outside. And oops, come on the wrong side of the thread there. There we go. And I'm just going to keep doing that all the way around. And one thing is I will be putting up the pattern for these borders when I have them all done. And but if you want to try this just on your own and you don't want to download the pattern, or you don't want to wait until I have the pattern up, I just used one of those templates that has the circles in it, and I just drew a line and little half circles coming off of it, and just did a circle this direction, a circle that direction, and then I made sure I have like a little bit of a guide there for the inner circle. Oops, wrong spot there. Have to go up here. Can't stitch and talk at the same time. And that's all I did, because really important to have those guides. Otherwise, you may get a little bit of a wonky circle. Anyway, I'm just going to keep doing that until I have the rest of my blanket stitch part done. And I'm going to finish off the last one. If I start on the right side here. And when I get to the very end, I'm just going to go ahead and finish it off with, take a tiny little stitch here and call them good. Alright, and I'm just going to do the same thing on our last half circle here. These would be really pretty if you used like a yellow or maybe an orange thread, because almost like a little sun rays. And but I'm keeping with my spring color theme here with our blues and purples and greens. This is an easier angle to work with. I don't want to move it around too much so people can really see what's going on the camera, but I would normally move this around so it was a little bit easier to do the stitches for each direction. And this is an easier direction to work with, because you can just come in and get these blanket stitches done really quickly. And you can see it's a very pretty stitch, very easy to do, and makes a really cool effect. Alright, we're going to get this finished up here. And I think we'll do just the last one here, and then we'll be done with our blanket stitch. Catch that there, and again take one tiny little stitch to just complete it. And like on all of them, I'm just going to be running that up and tying it off on the end. And I gotta just pull it a little tight, take a little stitch, and then I'm just gonna finish it off with a little knot and trim off my thread. Again, if you missed it in an earlier video, this is just a frame I picked up at a yard sale, and I stapled my fabric over it, so it gives me a nice base for making my little border sampler. Alright, Okay, now that I have the blanket stitch part done, I'm going to come back in with my pink. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come right in the middle of between the radials, and I'm going to put in a little French knot. And let's see, 1, 2, 3 wraps. Come down, keep that tail nice and tight, and just going to pull that through. All right. And now we're going to come in, we're going to put the satin stitch in, and we're going to come out just along the same line as if these were to join up. We're going to come a little away from this one, we're going to go back in a little away from this, and I'm going to put in my first stitch here. And of course you can use different colors on this. As I said, I chose these because they're nice and springy, and it's springtime right now, so I thought it might be nice for my border sampler. Alright, so I'm going to come just in just a little bit in from where I started that stitch, and I'm going to come in just a little bit from where I ended that stitch above them, just so that we're tapering it in a little bit. And then I'm going to come back on the other side and end a little bit before that first stitch ended, and then I'm going to put one more stitch. It's only 4 little bits of satin stitch, so it doesn't take up too much thread, and pull that through, and there we go. And then we're going to come up here, do another French knot, always keeping the tension on that way you don't have this you don't lose a little fluffy piece of thread sticking out in the wrong spot. And I'm going to go ahead and finish off our last satin stitch here, and then we'll have this part done again. Alright, so now we're going to be just putting our running stitch in, and we're just basically going to be outlining the outside of each of these radials, and just coming out. I'm not, as you can see here, I'm not touching the spokes. I'm just coming on the outside, and I kind of do a little bit of a guideline so that I come out that each of these French knots is going to be highlighted on each side by a running stitch. So I would hold this at a little bit of a different angle so this went faster if I was just doing it not on camera, but since we're on camera, it's going to go a little bit slower than if you were to do it at home, or if I were to do it not being on camera, because I want you guys to be able to see what's going on here. So just pulling in and out the running stitches, and making sure that they're not too far away from the spokes, not too close, following a little bit on the guideline that I drew on there with the pencil. And I'm just going to keep doing that all the way up all of my spokes here and around. Now I'm coming up here to the French knot, so what I want to do is make sure that my this stitch is not going to go over that, so I'm going to come in right before the knot, and then my next stitch I'm going to start right after the knot, so it just makes a little pretty little breakup of the stitch. And again, I'm just going to keep going following my guide, and I'm just going to keep running all the way up. And so I'll be back in a second and show you the finished one. So there you can see I have our next border done, and as I said, really simple, but it's a really delicate and intricate looking border. I mean, it looks like it's a little more complicated than it really is, and very great for like a little bit of a modern. I mean, this would look beautiful on like a, maybe even for like a, if you have like an Art Deco style going. I could just see this like on the line of a pillowcase or something, or I mean, just make yourself a sampler like I'm making myself. And I hope to see you in the next video when I'm going to be doing the next border up here. And if you like any of the borders below that, please be sure to go back and look at my beautiful border series. And I have tutorials for all of my borders that I've done so far. And if you're unsure of any of the stitches, I have a lot of tutorials on my YouTube channel on how to do the stitches. And we'll see you in the next one for the next border.